Silence is not weakness. It is the weapon of the deliberate, the refuge of the calculating. In every negotiation, every confrontation of wills, words are often spent as currency before their value is understood. Speak too soon, and you reveal the terrain of your mind, the depth of your hand, the shape of your ambition. Speak too much, and you allow the other to carve your thoughts into their advantage. The world does not reward the loud. It rewards the patient, the measured, the one who understands that the pause is itself a declaration of power. The human mind is restless, addicted to filling the void. When confronted by silence, the opponent projects, invents, doubts. Their assumptions are made for you, their concessions offered to you. You need not assault their position with rhetoric or reason. Let the emptiness between words do the work of persuasion. Every question left unanswered, every statement left hanging, becomes a lever against their certainty. Certainty is fragile. It collapses under the weight of careful observation, under the pressure of stillness. To argue is to trade energy, to expose vulnerability. It invites resistance. To remain silent is to watch, to measure, to map the inclinations, fears, and desires of those who oppose you. A single glance, a slight pause, a deliberate inhalation carries more authority than a paragraph of protest. In negotiation, the mind of the other is your battlefield. Speak less, and you compel them to advance into your strategy of their own accord. Every word you utter is a potential trap for yourself. Every silence is a snare set for them. Silence allows you to observe the rhythms of deception, the telltale tremors of ambition, the concealed betrayals waiting to surface. A man who answers every accusation, who justifies every stance, is a man who has already ceded control. Power lies not in explaining, but in withholding, not in convincing, but in commanding presence. The weight of unspoken thought is heavier than the most polished argument. It carries the authority of foresight, the calm of inevitability, the subtle terror of a mind that is not to be rushed. When the other grows restless, when they seek to fill the vacuum with agitation or flattery, you have already won the first layer of mastery. They reveal their priorities, their compromises, their fears. They offer their hand before you extend yours. You do not need to press. The architecture of their own desire builds the bridge you will cross. To speak is to risk losing the advantage. To remain silent is to let time, instinct, and human weakness serve your strategy. Control is rarely seized in moments of force. It is maintained in intervals of quiet, in the meticulous shaping of attention. The one who dominates the rhythm of interaction controls the outcome. Words are tools, yes, but silence is the hammer that sets them. In silence, the other negotiator is forced to confront their own impatience, their own miscalculations, their own misjudgments of your resolve. The longer they speak to fill the void, the deeper they entangle themselves in the web you have patiently constructed. Do not confuse this with passivity. Silence is action disguised as inaction. It is the pressure of a dam holding back the river until the moment of your choosing. The quietest presence in the room is often the one who moves the unseen levers of consequence. The mind seeks patterns, and in the stillness, it discovers you as the center of gravity. They wait for you to err. You wait for them to reveal. The advantage lies in the one who measures patience as precisely as strategy. Negotiation is theater, and the stage is the human mind. Every gesture, every pause, every unspoken thought is a script written in power. To argue, to demand, to justify is to hand them the pen. To remain silent is to leave them to write your story in their assumptions, a story that invariably favors the one who waits, who watches, who understands the psychology of control. Those who master silence wield it like a blade, invisible, sharp, unyielding. They understand that words can be knives, but silence can be an executioner. When you leave the room, when you withdraw from the fray, when you allow the silence to echo longer than the argument, you are not retreating. You are consolidating power. You are reminding the world that negotiation is never about the loudest voice, but the one who understands the calculus of patience, the art of waiting, the subtle coercion embedded in stillness. In the machinery of human ambition, silence is the oil that keeps the gears turning in your favor. It is the calm before the inevitable claim of authority, the invisible hand shaping outcomes while others squabble in sound. Do not mistake the absence of words for absence of will. The mind that wields silence is never idle. It observes every flicker of doubt, every hesitation, every micro-decision made by those who believe they hold leverage. You do not need to argue. You only need to endure. You only need to hold the pause. The human instinct to fill voids, to assert, to explain, becomes the very instrument of your influence. Silence is the stage on which they perform for you. Silence is the strategy they cannot resist. Silence is the dominion of the master over all who speak, without knowing the cost of their words. Every gesture in a room is a declaration, every glance a subtle negotiation. The human mind interprets silence as intention, and in that interpretation, it reveals itself. Those who speak too quickly betray the architecture of their ambition, revealing the scaffolding of hope and fear upon which they stand. You do not rush to fill the gaps. You allow them to stumble, to expose the seams of their argument, the hidden fractures of their desire. In the economy of influence, words are currency, and silence is the vault. To open your mouth without necessity is to spend what could have been preserved, to diminish your leverage before the true reckoning. Fear is the instrument often underestimated. Not fear of force, but the quiet fear that arises when the other confronts the immensity of unspoken thought. People fear that which they cannot measure, cannot predict, cannot manipulate. Silence is the landscape upon which this fear grows, an invisible terrain over which they must navigate without compass. They will overextend, overcommit, overexpose themselves, compelled by the human need to impose order upon what is unseen. Each misstep is your gain, each premature concession a victory that requires no struggle. Observation is the currency of the patient. To listen without response is to collect intelligence, to map the psychological topography of ambition, greed, and insecurity. Every hesitation, every repetition, every subtle correction in their tone is a clue, a window into strategy and intent. You need not interrogate. The mind, confronted by silence, interrogates itself. It lays bare its priorities, its fears, its limitations. In this self-revelation, you gain clarity. The less you speak, the more you understand, and in understanding, you command. The appearance of control is as vital as control itself. A calm demeanor, a measured posture, a gaze that absorbs without betraying judgment. These are the instruments of subtle dominion. The room adjusts to the presence that refuses agitation, that refuses persuasion, that refuses the noise of desperation. Others speak to fill the void, but you speak only when the articulation aligns with strategy. Every word is sharpened by necessity, every sentence weighed against consequence. This is the calculus of leadership, knowing when restraint is superior to assertion, when patience outmaneuvers urgency. Manipulation need not be overt. It is often quiet, imperceptible, unavoidable. Silence manipulates by default. It is a mirror that forces the other to confront their own assumptions, a trap that relies on instinct rather than argument. In waiting, you become the gravitational center around which their decisions orbit. They do not realize that in striving to influence you, they are already influenced. Each move they make in the absence of your reply is guided by the architecture of your design. They act as if free, yet freedom without understanding is mere motion. Direction is already imposed by the patient observer. Every negotiation is a battle fought in shadows, and silence is the ambush from which you strike without revealing your hand. Timing is your ally. The pause before response, the delayed affirmation, the restrained correction. These are instruments of inevitability. They cultivate anxiety, they exploit impatience, they convert projection into leverage. Those who demand clarity too soon are blind to the value of waiting. Those who insist on debate are blind to the potency of stillness. The master knows that to withhold is to gain, that in every void lies 1,000 potential victories. In the theater of ambition, Appearances are reality. To argue incessantly is to reveal the map of your mind. To remain silent is to let others draw it for you, inevitably in your favor. You are both absent and present, passive and decisive, inscrutable and unavoidable. They speak, they push, they prod, and in every attempt they carry you forward. Each concession they offer, each justification they construct, is scaffolded by your silence. Power is the subtle force that bends motion without effort. Words are the visible exertion that rarely achieves the same effect. Authority, in its purest form, is the mastery of timing and perception. It is the patience to remain unbroken, the discipline to resist the seduction of immediate engagement, the clarity to see the interplay of fear, desire, and ambition that governs the human mind. You are not drawn into the petty skirmishes of assertion. You construct the battlefield in the mind of the other. They fight for position, yet it is you who determines the stakes, the rules, and ultimately, the outcome. Every silence becomes a boundary, a barrier, a subtle command that is felt more than it is articulated. The one who wields silence effectively does not dominate by volume or vehemence. They dominate by inevitability. Others act into their strategy before even realizing the architecture that has guided them. The patient observer allows mistakes to manifest, reveals priorities through inaction, and converts the instinctive need to fill emptiness into a tool of control. You need not coerce. The mind coerces itself. You need not threaten. The mind fears its own projections. You are quiet, yet everywhere present. You are still, yet shaping motion. Silence is not merely passive. It is an instrument of authority, a lens of perception, a theater of inevitability. In its restraint lies potency. In its observation lies insight. In its patience lies victory. To speak is to risk. To remain silent is to command. Every human interaction is a negotiation of attention, desire, and influence. And those who master the art of the pause understand that power is not taken in argument, but in the absence of it. In this quiet dominion, the landscape of control is laid bare, the machinery of ambition revealed, and the true architecture of leadership exercised without force, without spectacle, and without mercy. Every moment of hesitation is a decision, every stillness a strategy. The human mind cannot endure emptiness without projecting meaning into it. In negotiation, this projection is your most reliable ally. The other will speak to fill the vacuum, reveal priorities they intended to conceal, confess weaknesses they hoped remained hidden. Every word they offer is a gift crafted by their own instincts, handed into your waiting hands. You do not need to interrogate, you need only observe. Each pause you maintain is a calculated pressure, each silence a quiet dominion over their impulses. Power is rarely asserted through force alone. It is cultivated in the intervals, the unspoken, the unclaimed. Authority is not demonstrated in volume, but in the weight of presence, in the measured heartbeat that precedes response. To argue is to expend energy and reveal the architecture of your mind. To remain silent is to compel the other to expose themselves, to negotiate with shadows they cannot map. In the stillness, the landscape of influence shifts. Control migrates to the one who observes, waits, and interprets without haste. Fear is subtle, intangible, yet infinitely potent. Not the fear of immediate harm, but the quiet anxiety that emerges when one faces the unknown within another's mind. Silence cultivates this fear. It forces the other to anticipate, to miscalculate, to reveal what they would otherwise guard. Each twitch, each faltering word, each hesitation becomes evidence of their vulnerability. You do not create this fear, you permit it. You allow their own imagination to construct the cage from which they cannot escape. Observation is your tool, patience your shield. The human mind, confronted by stillness, begins its own excavation, exposing desires, limitations, and contradictions. In this excavation, clarity is gained. Words spoken in haste are mistakes recorded in perpetuity. Silence is the untraceable power that shapes outcomes before intervention is necessary. You need not persuade. You need not coerce. You only need to endure. To endure is to see, to calculate, to convert instinct into advantage. Appearances are weapons as much as they are shields. A calm demeanor, a measured gaze, a presence that refuses agitation, these convey authority beyond argument. Others, agitated by your restraint, speak more, reveal more, concede more. They act under the illusion of control, while control itself is quietly secured by your refusal to act prematurely. The mind seeks patterns and predictability. In silence, it constructs its own, inevitably guided by the framework you have imposed without uttering a single word. Manipulation thrives in the absence of assertion. When you withhold, the other projects. When you refrain, they act. Each concession, each overextension, each verbal tremor is the result of their own initiative, guided by your strategic quiet. You do not push. They move themselves into the field you have prepared. Every attempt they make to dominate is already accounted for, every maneuver anticipated, every instinct exploited. The art of control is the art of allowing action to occur on your terms without immediate intervention. Timing is the measure of mastery. A delayed affirmation, a measured nod, a withheld response. These are instruments of inevitability. In the theater of negotiation, the pause is the most formidable actor. It evokes doubt, impatience, desire, and caution in equal measure. The impatient reveal too much. The overconfident expose themselves. The anxious construct traps they cannot perceive. All of this occurs because the mind craves closure where none is given. Silence is the lever. The other moves into its arc of their own volition. In all human interaction, the ultimate currency is perception. Those who speak to assert often do so at the expense of their own influence. Those who remain silent preserve theirs. You are not absent. You are everywhere present, observed in their thoughts, anticipated in their strategies, shaping the direction of their movements without declaring intent. To remain silent is to dominate not by spectacle, but by inevitability, to command not by argument, but by the invisible architecture of restraint and presence. The effectiveness of silence lies not in passivity, but in its inexorable precision. Every hesitation, every pause, every unspoken observation becomes a vector of influence. Others act to fill the void, and in doing so, act into your strategy. Every revelation they make is self-generated. Every concession is offered uncoerced. You need not speak. The machinery of human instinct has already conspired to produce the outcome you seek. The quiet mind, the still presence, the patient observer, these are the instruments of mastery. Control, in its purest form, is the orchestration of human behavior without recourse to argument. The patient mind understands timing, anticipates desire, and leverages instinct. Silence converts projection into insight, hesitation into leverage, impatience into advantage. To speak unnecessarily is to diminish this power. To speak strategically is to punctuate inevitability with precision. The mastery of negotiation is therefore the mastery of restraint, the command of perception, the calculated endurance of silence. Every unspoken thought carries weight. Every measured pause becomes a tool of influence. The human mind, when confronted by absence, begins to fill it with projections, with assumptions, with imagined consequences. In this fertile terrain of uncertainty, power is quietly sown. You do not need to argue, to convince, or to threaten. You only need to remain, to observe, to calibrate. Each gesture, each glance, each withheld word compounds the authority that is silently accrued. The world responds not to noise but to presence, not to argument but to inevitability. The eyes reveal what speech cannot contain. In the quiet of observation, every flicker of emotion, every micro-expression, every imperceptible tension is mapped and recorded. You read strategy in the curl of a lip, intent in the lift of a brow, weakness in the falter of a hand. Words are transient, their echoes fade. Silence, however, commands attention precisely because it is intangible, unassailable, omnipresent. It forces the other to confront themselves, to negotiate against their own instincts, to betray their own calculations. Ambition is a predictable force when left to itself. The impatient seek to assert, the insecure seek to justify, the greedy seek advantage. Silence exploits these tendencies. It does not demand truth. It allows truth to emerge unbidden. Each concession offered, each hesitation revealed, each verbal misstep is harvested without effort. You do not speak to extract. You watch the mind extract itself. Power is in the observation, the patience, the quiet orchestration of behavior before any word is committed. In every negotiation, the veneer of civility masks the unrelenting calculus of self-interest. Those who speak too quickly betray the architecture of their position, revealing the structure of priorities, fears, and desires that they intended to conceal. Silence, in contrast, shields the mind while exposing the opponents. The quiet observer maintains command by withholding not only information but reaction itself. To yield a word is to cede a point. To withhold is to accumulate leverage. The psychological pressure of silence is inexorable. Humans are drawn to closure, to explanation, to the relief of understanding. When you refuse to provide it, they begin to supply it themselves, constructing narratives that always serve your advantage. You need not intervene. The mind will betray its own calculations. Every attempt to dominate, to argue, to assert, is redirected by their own need to interpret, to rationalize, to fill the void you have intentionally left. Your presence is felt not through speech, but through the disciplined weight of restraint. Appearance is authority, a calm gaze, an unflinching posture, a measured attention. These communicate power without utterance. Others, unsettled by their own projection, disclose far more than you could ever demand. Every attempt to fill the silence reveals hierarchy, exposes weakness, confirms strength. You remain impervious, unhurried, anticipating each move while they act into the architecture you have already constructed. Presence is silent dominion. Words are only punctuation upon it. The patient negotiator converts instinct into leverage. Every doubt, every hesitation, every desire expressed by the other is a vector to be guided. The unspoken communicates far more than the spoken. Restraint transforms into authority. Silence is both shield and instrument. It preserves your strategy while compelling the other to enact it on your terms. In the economy of influence, silence is capital, patience is interest, observation is return. Every interaction is a battlefield, where the mind is the true terrain. Words are the visible skirmishes, easily misdirected, easily countered. Silence is the underlying strategy, the hidden supply lines, the trap laid in plain sight. Those who rush to speak fight for position they have already lost. Those who endure, who calibrate, who command through restraint, shape the outcome before any dialogue begins. The quiet are everywhere present, guiding, directing, controlling without declaration, without argument, without overt coercion. The mastery of silence is mastery of timing, perception, and consequence. The one who speaks least holds the greatest power, not because they dominate sound, but because they dominate understanding. Every pause is a lever, every restraint a vector, every withheld word a map of inevitability. To wield silence is to wield authority over perception itself. It is to convert human need for certainty into the machinery of your influence. The other acts, believes they lead, yet moves precisely within the architecture you have established. Power, in its purest form, is invisible. It is the quiet imposition of order, the patient orchestration of instinct, the shaping of outcomes before awareness arises. To speak unnecessarily is to diminish it. To wait, observe, and act only when strategy demands is to extend it infinitely. Silence is not absence, it is presence tempered, refined, absolute. Every human interaction bends toward those who master it, who endure it, who command it, without uttering a word. In silence lies the ultimate dominion, a dominion that requires no argument, no spectacle, no coercion beyond the quiet weight of inevitability. Every decision you refrain from making is itself a maneuver, every withheld reaction a calculated strike. The human mind assumes that silence is surrender, that inaction signals weakness, that the absence of protest is consent. This is the most consistent error of those untrained in the calculus of power. You allow them to believe they dominate, while quietly constructing the conditions under which their compliance, their concession, their defeat will arrive without resistance. Patience is not idle. It is the slow accumulation of advantage, measured and inexorable. Observation must be precise, relentless, and merciless. Every inflection, every tremor, every hesitation in the other's voice is data. Every glance that avoids your eyes, every gesture that overcompensates for insecurity, every effort to dominate the conversation becomes evidence of their weakness. You do not correct, you do not confront. You record, you interpret, you anticipate. The battlefield of negotiation exists not in the words exchanged, but in the shadows between them, and mastery lies in seeing that battlefield while the opponent is blind to it. Deception is most effective when it is subtle and unacknowledged. To reveal your understanding is to limit its potency. The less they know of your perception, the more they betray themselves. A single careless statement from them, a premature defense, a repetition of argument, these are the spoils of silence. They are unaware that their efforts to dominate, to convince, to explain, have been guided into the architecture of your choosing. In this, power is quiet, unassailable, and complete. The human mind is drawn to resolution, to the filling of voids, to the interpretation of meaning. Silence exploits this instinct without effort. Those who rush to fill the emptiness do so at their own expense, revealing strategy, priority, and vulnerability. Your patience becomes a mirror. Their projection creates the outcome. No force is needed. The mind, confronted with absence, becomes its own instrument of influence. Every concession extracted, every weakness exposed, is self-inflicted. Authority is a condition of perception more than assertion. Calmness, measured gaze, a posture of unshakable attention, these communicate dominance far more effectively than argument or persuasion. Others act into your power without realizing it, compelled by the architecture of their own projections. To respond too quickly, to explain, to justify, is to weaken this perception. The disciplined negotiator understands that silence is a signal, a boundary, a lever of inevitability that shapes behavior without words. All negotiation is a performance, but not the one they expect. The quiet observer scripts the play invisibly, leaving the other to act as both actor and author of their own exposure. Every attempt to influence you, to dominate, to secure advantage, is absorbed and redirected into the outcome you desire. You need not threaten. Their own instincts do that work for you. You need not persuade. Their own reasoning constructs your victory. In the theater of ambition, silence is the director, unseen yet omnipotent. Time is the ally of the patient and the enemy of the impulsive. Every pause, every delayed acknowledgement, every measured silence increases leverage. Impatience compelle action. Désir compelle disclosure. Uncertainty compelle concession. The mind, uncomfortable with unfilled space, fills it with its own errors. Each moment spent observing rather than reacting compounds the advantage. You do not act prematurely. You allow them to act into your design, unknowingly and irrevocably. Control is exercised through restraint, not agitation. To dominate, one must first understand the natural rhythms of ambition, fear, and desire. The quiet presence absorbs initiative, redirects intent, and converts instinct into compliance. Words, when necessary, are precise instruments, not weapons of desperation. Silence, however, is the unspoken law, unyielding, invisible, absolute. In it, others reveal their own calculations, expose their weaknesses, and advance your strategy while believing they act independently. The master of negotiation knows that power lies in anticipation, in patience, in perception. To speak without need is to squander influence. To wait is to accumulate advantage. Every hesitation observed, every unguarded admission, every instinctive overreach is accounted for. In silence, you govern outcomes without coercion, command respect without speech, and extract victory without confrontation. The quiet mind shapes reality, while others scramble to define it, and in that shaping lies the unassailable dominion of authority. Every move the other makes becomes predictable when guided by silence. They speak to fill voids, justify intentions, assert authority, and in each act, they reveal the contours of their strategy. You do not need to intervene. Their own impulses align with your design. Patience allows observation to become action before action itself begins. The mind that waits understands that haste is vulnerability, that speech is exposure, that the rhythm of inaction is a form of subtle coercion, far more effective than argument. The instinct to explain oneself is universal. Those who rush to clarify, to persuade, to dominate, betray the architecture of their own position. Silence compels them to disclose, to overreach, to contradict, all while believing they are securing advantage. Observation in these moments is decisive. Every twitch, every pause, every subtle adjustment of posture communicates volumes. Your own restraint magnifies their errors. You do not need to press. They press themselves into your strategy, unknowing participants in the orchestration of their own compliance. Deception is most effective when invisible. To reveal awareness diminishes control. To conceal calculation increases leverage. In silence, others construct their own narratives, interpret intentions, and unwittingly execute your strategy. Their need to dominate, to assert, to clarify, becomes the mechanism through which power is exercised. Words, when they emerge from you, are precision strikes, surgical, unavoidable. Silence is the weapon that shapes the battlefield long before any visible engagement occurs. Every human instinct can be harnessed. Fear of uncertainty, desire for influence, impatience, ambition, all are tools for the silent strategist. By withholding reaction, you exploit these forces. Each hesitation by the other, each miscalculation, each impulsive assertion is a resource harvested for strategic gain. You do not need to persuade, threaten, or coerce. You need only observe, understand, and allow the architecture of human behavior to advance your interests. Inaction becomes action, restraint becomes control, and presence alone becomes dominion. The power of appearance cannot be overstated. Calmness, measured attention, unwavering posture, these communicate authority beyond argument. The other interprets stillness as confidence, mastery, inevitability. In response, they reveal themselves, act prematurely, and concede advantage without awareness. You are everywhere present in their calculation, shaping choices invisibly, dictating outcomes silently, commanding attention without speaking a word. This is the art of subtle dominion, the exercise of power that does not announce itself, yet leaves no doubt of its force. Timing is decisive. Every pause, every delayed response, every moment of observation compounds influence. The human mind is intolerant of voids. It seeks resolution, explanation, and closure. Silence converts this need into leverage. Each attempt to dominate, to explain, to convince, becomes the instrument of your control. You need not intervene, for their own instinct completes the work. The one who waits understands that patience is strategy, and that control exercised over time is unassailable. Every negotiation is a battlefield of perception. The one who speaks most often reveals the map of their mind. The one who remains silent shapes the map of the opponent. Observation converts instinct into intelligence, patience into authority, restraint into power. Words, when used sparingly, punctuate inevitability. Silence, when mastered, dictates it. Those who underestimate it act into your hands, unaware that every attempt to influence you, every assertion, every overreach, strengthens your dominion. The master of silence converts human instinct into strategy, human weakness into advantage, human impatience into inevitability. To endure, To observe, to withhold, is to govern outcomes before any exchange begins. Every hesitation becomes information. Every disclosure becomes resource. Every attempt to assert becomes the means of their own subjugation. In the economy of power, silence is the capital, patience is the accrual, and observation is the yield. Authority is cultivated not through argument, but through presence. Every word is measured, every gesture deliberate, every pause weighted with consequence. Those who seek to dominate do so in vain, for their own instincts betray them under the gravity of unspoken command. Silence is not absence, it is calculation incarnate, the visible invisibility of control, the quiet force that bends human behavior toward inevitability. To wield it is to govern without contest, to command without threat, to prevail without declaration. Every human interaction conceals a calculus few recognize. Every smile, every nod, every measured pause is a vector of influence. Those who speak hastily misjudge the depth of restraint. Those who argue incessantly reveal the architecture of their ambition before it is fully formed. Silence, in contrast, allows you to map intent without exposure. You see strategy in hesitation, uncover priority in misstatement, and exploit desire in the instinct to fill voids. To withhold is to guide, to endure is to command, to observe is to shape outcomes before a single word is spoken. The mind craves certainty, yet certainty is rarely granted without cost. In the quiet of observation, others reveal the cost of their own need for control. Every attempt to assert dominance, to explain, to justify, is absorbed by your stillness and returned as information, advantage, insight. You need not challenge, you need only watch. Every error they commit, every overextension, every inadvertent admission is a resource harvested without risk. Power accrues in the intervals, in the unspoken, in the invisible architecture of patience and presence. Manipulation is most effective when it is unseen. Silence converts instinct into leverage, hesitation into compliance, fear into action. The opponent acts against their own calculation while believing themselves free. Each concession extracted, each truth revealed, each misstep committed is self-inflicted. You do not need to coerce. You need only allow the mechanisms of human psychology to operate in your favor. The quiet mind guides the loud. The still presence bends the restless. The measured observer dominates the impulsive. Authority is perception distilled into presence. A gaze that does not waver, a posture that does not yield, an attention that absorbs without judgment. These are the instruments of subtle command. The other, unsettled by the emptiness you maintain, reveals instinctively what they intended to conceal. Every gesture, every slip, every unintended disclosure is recorded and converted into advantage. You speak only when necessity demands, and then with precision, ensuring each word furthers inevitability rather than contests it. Patience is strategy incarnate. Every delay, every calculated pause, every moment spent observing compounds influence. Impatience, desire, and the need for closure compel action from others. They reveal priorities, reveal weakness, reveal themselves. Silence is the mechanism by which these forces are harnessed, converted into leverage without exertion. The one who masters it does not seek to dominate through argument, but to bend reality through the quiet architecture of perception and timing. Every negotiation is a theater, but not the one the other expects. You are both absent and omnipresent, restrained yet influential, silent yet commanding. They act, they argue, they overreach, believing themselves free, while every move aligns with your invisible design. Words, when finally spoken, are instruments of precision, punctuating the inevitability already set in motion. Silence has already shaped the outcome. Your intervention merely completes what patience and observation have long established. The economy of power is built on unspoken leverage. Words are spent, silence preserves, reaction exposes, observation informs, impulse betrays, restraint governs. Those who cannot endure the quiet, surrender authority unconsciously, while those who endure it acquire mastery without apparent effort. Every human instinct, fear, ambition, desire, impatience becomes a tool when allowed to operate under the gravity of silence. You do not act on them, they act themselves into your strategy. Control is exercised invisibly, subtly, inexorably. Every hesitation of the other becomes data, every disclosure becomes resource, every attempt to dominate becomes an instrument of their own subjugation. Timing, perception, and presence convert inaction into authority. The mind that waits understands that silence is not absence, restraint is not weakness, and observation is not passivity. It is the quiet dominion of inevitability over impulse, of calculation over chaos, of subtlety over spectacle. Victory rarely arrives in moments of sound. It comes in the intervals, the pauses, the weight of presence, the patient orchestration of instinct. Those who rush to speak, to argue, to assert, act into the strategy of the silent observer. Every concession, every overreach, every revelation is self-produced, harvested by a mind that knows the architecture of control. Silence is the blade, patience the strike, observation the leverage, together forming the machinery by which outcomes are shaped before awareness itself arises. The advantage of silence is cumulative. Each unspoken word, each withheld judgment, compounds over time, shaping perception long before confrontation occurs. Those who rush to fill gaps reveal more than they intend: priorities, weaknesses, ambitions, and fears. You do not need to interrogate. The other's own instinct supplies all the answers. Patience converts their motion into opportunity, their projection into leverage, their restlessness into concession. To endure is to govern. To withhold is to dictate. To observe is to design the outcome invisibly. In every interaction, human instinct is the true battlefield. Desire, fear, ambition, impatience, all are predictable, exploitable forces. Silence forces these tendencies to surface without interference. The other moves as if autonomous, yet their actions are guided by the invisible gravity of your presence. Each verbal overreach, each unguarded admission, each impulsive gesture becomes a tool of influence. You need not persuade, coerce, or threaten. You need only exist as the patient observer, allowing instinct to operate within the framework of your design. Observation, unbroken and disciplined, is itself an act of control. Every micro-expression, every hesitation, every subtle adjustment communicates information that cannot be fabricated. The mind that is silent reads what is exposed involuntarily. Argument reveals, silence absorbs. In this, patience and perception are inseparable instruments. To react hastily is to expose. To wait is to gather intelligence. Every pause is a lever. Every moment of restraint converts impulse into inevitability. Authority is enforced by presence, not volume. A measured gaze, a calm demeanor, unwavering attention. These are instruments of influence far more precise than words. Others, unsettled by the emptiness you maintain, betray instinctively what they intended to conceal. Every attempt to dominate, to explain, to assert, becomes the mechanism by which your control is reinforced. Speech, when necessary, punctuates what silence has already achieved. It does not create it. The passage of time magnifies advantage for the patient. Every delay, every calculated pause, every moment spent observing rather than reacting intensifies leverage. Impatience, desire, and the craving for closure compel action from the other, revealing priorities, weaknesses, and strategies. Silence converts these forces into instruments of authority. To speak too soon is to surrender the advantage. To endure is to orchestrate outcomes invisibly. Every negotiation is a performance authored by the quiet observer. The other acts, argues, and projects, believing themselves in control, while each gesture aligns with the architecture you have established. Words, when finally spoken, strike with precision, punctuating inevitability rather than attempting to shape it. Silence has already dictated the terms. Intervention only completes what patience, observation, and restraint have set in motion. Human instinct is the raw material of mastery. Fear, ambition, desire, and impatience all respond to absence, to uncertainty, to unbroken attention. By withholding reaction, you convert these instincts into instruments of compliance. Every hesitation observed, every overreach committed, every revelation made is harvested effortlessly. Silence is both shield and weapon, restraint both strategy and execution. Control is exercised invisibly. Every unspoken observation becomes leverage, every withheld response becomes authority, every failure to dominate becomes the mechanism of your design. Timing, perception, and patience transform inaction into command, restraint into power, and presence into dominion. The quiet strategist understands that silence is not emptiness, observation is not passivity, and restraint is not weakness. They are the tools through which human behavior is guided toward inevitability. Victory is rarely won by sound. It is cultivated in the pauses, the intervals, the weight of presence, and the patient orchestration of instinct. Those who speak too quickly, too loudly, or too eagerly act into the framework constructed by the silent observer. Each concession, each overextension, each disclosure is self-produced, harvested by a mind that commands without spectacle. Silence is the blade, patience is the strike, observation is the leverage. Together, they form the mechanism through which outcomes are secured before awareness even arises. Every hesitation you allow, every moment you refrain from speaking, magnifies the authority you wield. The other interprets stillness as calculation, presence as inevitability. Their need to act, to fill silence, to assert control, becomes the instrument of your dominance. They believe they are shaping events. In truth, their every motion has already been guided. Each impulse they cannot restrain, each word they cannot withhold, is a resource for your strategy, a concession freely given, a misstep harvested without exertion. Human behavior is predictable when observed without interference. Desire, fear, ambition, impatience, these are constants, susceptible to the architecture of silent influence. By withholding your own voice, you allow instinct to operate openly, revealing intent and weakness alike. The one who seeks to dominate, confronted with absence, projects, assumptions, miscalculates priorities, and overcommits to the strategy you have set in motion. To act too soon is to squander advantage. To wait is to convert instinct into leverage, motion into inevitability. Observation is a weapon sharper than argument. Every flicker of expression, every micro-adjustment of posture, every subtle inflection is data. Those who speak eagerly betray patterns of thought and desire. Those who justify themselves expose vulnerability. Silence absorbs this intelligence and transforms it into power. Reaction, unless calculated with precision, diminishes influence. The patient mind endures, records, interprets, and waits for the precise moment when intervention is not persuasion, but inevitability realized. Authority manifests through perception, and perception is shaped by restraint. Calm demeanor, unwavering gaze, measured attention. These communicate dominance without uttering a word. Others, unsettled by your silence, project onto it, revealing what they intended to conceal. Their attempts to assert control, to explain, to convince, are absorbed and redirected into the architecture of your strategy. Words, when deployed, serve as punctuation to a design already established. They do not create control, they reinforce it. Patience is leverage. Every calculated delay, every measured pause, every refusal to act amplifies influence. The human mind cannot endure unfilled spaces. It seeks closure, explanation, and certainty. Silence converts these needs into instruments of control. Each overreach, each premature disclosure, each defensive argument is captured and utilized. To speak too soon is to expend power unnecessarily. To endure is to orchestrate the inevitable outcome with precision invisible to those ensnared by it. Negotiation is a theater. yet the stage is guided invisibly by the patient observer. The other performs, projects, overreaches, all while believing themselves autonomous. Every concession, every revelation, every instinctive misstep is self-generated. The strategist requires no coercion, no threat, no demonstration of force. Silence and presence are sufficient to bend action, direct thought, and guide behavior toward outcomes that serve calculated advantage. The raw material of mastery is human instinct. Fear, desire, ambition, and impatience are constants to be observed, measured, and exploited. By remaining silent, you convert these instincts into tools of influence. Each hesitation, each slip, each overextension is harvested without risk, every unguarded word transformed into resource. Silence functions as shield and weapon, observation as insight and execution, restraint as strategy and leverage. Control is invisible, subtle, relentless. Every unspoken observation becomes leverage. Every withheld response becomes authority. Every failure of the other to dominate becomes an instrument of your design. Timing, perception, and patience transform inaction into command, restraint into power, and presence into dominion. Silence is not emptiness. It is calculation incarnate. Observation is not passivity. It is strategy realized. Restraint is not weakness. It is the invisible force that guides human behavior toward inevitability. Victory is cultivated in the intervals, the pauses, the weight of presence, and the patient orchestration of instinct. Those who speak too eagerly act into the framework already constructed by the silent observer. Each concession, each misstep, each inadvertent disclosure is self-produced, harvested by a mind that commands without spectacle. Silence is the blade. Patience is the strike. Observation is leverage. Together, they form the machine by which outcomes are secured before awareness even arises. Every unspoken word carries weight greater than any argument could convey. The human mind, confronted with absence, begins to speculate, to anticipate, to reveal its own strategy without guidance. In negotiation, this projection is the most potent form of influence. The other acts to fill the void, to assert authority, to rationalize intent, yet in each of these motions they betray priorities, expose weaknesses, and confirm your foresight. You do not need to speak. The architecture of their own instinct delivers the outcome you desire. The timing of silence is itself a weapon. A pause extended beyond comfort compels disclosure. Hesitation becomes confession, and projection becomes leverage. The impatient offer too much, the overconfident reveal too early, the fearful miscalculate under pressure. In every case, your stillness harvests advantage without risk. Authority is not demonstrated in volume. It is imposed invisibly through the weight of presence and the discipline of restraint. To act before necessity is to diminish power. To wait is to convert anticipation into inevitability. Observation is the unseen dominion. Every micro-expression, every subtle adjustment, every involuntary gesture becomes intelligence. Those who attempt to dominate, to justify, or to persuade are themselves instruments of your strategy, guided unknowingly into exposure by the gravitational pull of your silence. Argument reveals, silence commands. The patient mind absorbs without distortion, calculates without haste, and converts insight into leverage long before the other realizes the battlefield has been defined. Human desire and fear are constants that can be measured and exploited. Silence transforms them into tools of persuasion without effort. Each attempt to assert, each flinch of anxiety, each hesitation is an opportunity harvested for strategic gain. You do not coerce, instinct coerces itself. The other believes they are navigating freely, yet every choice, every utterance, every concession occurs within the framework you have silently imposed. Power is exercised without spectacle, invisibly and inevitably. The perception of authority is shaped by restraint. A calm gaze, an unwavering posture, Measured attention, these convey mastery more convincingly than argument. The other interprets the absence of speech as deliberation, foresight, and inevitability. In their projection, they reveal themselves. Every attempt they make to dominate, to explain, to influence, only reinforces the structure of your advantage. Words, when finally spoken, serve as precision instruments to punctuate the outcome already secured by your silence. Patience converts inaction into power. Every delay, every measured pause, every refusal to respond immediately increases leverage. The human mind cannot abide uncertainty. It seeks resolution, explanation, and control. Silence converts these instincts into self-directed compliance. Overreach becomes inevitable. Exposure is self-generated, and concession is freely offered. The patient observer does not act prematurely, yet all outcomes unfold according to the design silently imposed. Negotiation is a theater of perception, yet the stage is yours to direct invisibly. The other acts, argues, and reveals, all while believing themselves free. Each instinctive motion, every verbal slip, every strategic error becomes the material from which advantage is built. You need not intervene with force, argument, or persuasion. The mechanisms of human instinct complete the work for you. Silence guides, observes, and governs without declaration, and in this invisibility lies the highest dominion. Control is subtle, relentless, and invisible. Each hesitation, each misstatement, each impulsive motion is recorded, interpreted, and converted into leverage. Timing, patience, and presence transform restraint into command, observation into execution, and quiet into authority. Silence is never absence. It is calculation rendered tangible. Observation is never passivity. It is strategy unfolding. Restraint is never weakness. It is the instrument through which human behavior is shaped toward inevitability. Mastery lies in the patient orchestration of human instinct. Every fear, every desire, every ambition, every impulse responds predictably to the architecture of silence. By observing, withholding, and enduring, you convert instinct into compliance, impulsivity into error, and projection into advantage. Those who speak too quickly act into the design of the patient observer. Every revelation, every misstep, every concession is self-produced, harvested without effort. Silence is the blade, patience is the strike, observation is the leverage. The final mastery of negotiation lies not in argument, but in the enduring silence that precedes all resolution. Every word spoken in haste diminishes authority. Every pause sustained with purpose consolidates it. The human mind cannot resist filling the void, and in filling it, it constructs its own surrender. Those who rush to speak, to justify, to dominate, act into your design, unaware that they are executing the strategy laid by your restraint. Silence, carefully maintained, is the conduit through which power flows unseen, unstoppable, inevitable. The one who commands without speaking shapes outcomes before they are realized. Observation converts instinct into intelligence, patience into leverage, and restraint into authority. Every hesitation, every overreach, every slip of the other's tongue is harvested as if by design, each a tool in the invisible machinery of control. You need not coerce. Instinct does it for you. You need not threaten. Desire and fear do it for you. You need not argue. Projection completes the work on its own. In this quiet dominion, the outcomes are predetermined, yet appear freely chosen. Authority is the perception of inevitability. Calmness, unwavering attention, measured presence, these communicate mastery more convincingly than speech ever could. The other, unsettled by absence, reveals themselves, overextends, miscalculates. Their motion becomes your instrument, their errors your gain. Words, when finally used, are precision strikes, punctuating what silence has already achieved. Every gesture, every pause, every unspoken thought compounds influence. Power resides in the architecture of restraint, and it is in silence that the foundation is laid. Victory arrives in the intervals, in the pauses, in the spaces others cannot endure. Those who speak too eagerly, too loudly, too insistently, play directly into the hands of the quiet observer. Every concession, every misstep, every revelation is self-produced, harvested without struggle. Silence is both blade and shield. Patience is strike and strategy. Observation is leverage and execution. Together, they form the machinery by which outcomes are secured before awareness itself arises. To master negotiation is to master restraint, timing, perception, and the predictable instincts of human behavior. The one who wields silence effectively does not simply survive confrontation. They shape it, dominate it, and bend the will of others without declaration. In the end, it is not argument that conquers, nor persuasion that prevails. It is the unyielding, deliberate, omnipresent command of silence that determines who leads, who yields, and who controls the flow of power. In silence lies inevitability, in patience lies dominion, in observation lies mastery, and through them the world is quietly, decisively, irrevocably yours.